the Buddha that I want to read and talk about, and then we can have some discussion. Um, the meditation, there's a teaching from the Buddha where he talks about two kinds of mindfulness, and the analogy he uses is that of a cow herd, so cow shepherd, cow herder, and one is the kind of mindfulness that's required when uh, the cattle is grazing next to crops that are for human consumption. You have to be very, uh, very like on it, aware, ardent. If the cattle strays towards the direction of your crops, you jump up and you escort it back. The kind of like diligence and ardency. And then there's the kind of mindfulness that one applies when the harvest has already happened, where it's a kind of like laid back, leaning back kind of global mindfulness. You don't have to track exactly where each cow is, just that they're, with whatever the range of the uh, grazing is. And so I'm just that we try both of these in our meditation this morning. And so one uh, way to contextualize that is that when we're uh, pre-harvest, let's call it, we're um, when you notice the mind wandering into thought, that's like wandering into the food crops, that you bring it back with a kind of sense of urgency. Bring it back with a kind of sense of like loyalty to the object of meditation, which guide us using the breath. And it's not a straining, you're not grabbing onto the cow trying to keep it in a particular space. It's more the responsiveness to when the cow does what cows do, which is kind of roam around. And so it's a responsiveness to the mind's tendency to wander. So the effort, this is an important distinction. The ardency or the effort is all in the regrouping and the coming back in the beginning again. And then for the second half of our meditation, we'll see what it's like to just relax that ardency a little bit, which is actually kind of makes sense once mindfulness is more established. We don't have to be as on it. That example. Uh, Hopefully that makes sense. That just popped into my mind and I started riffing. Um, so finding a posture that is as comfortable as possible. You can soften the gaze, close your eyes. And there's this movement of the mind, rousing mindfulness. We're pretty much always aware, or we couldn't function, but this difference. And we're like aware of the body, but also aware that we're aware. Aware that there is a body, that we're in a body, we have a body. And the body has a location and an orientation in space. The body is connected to the ground, directly or indirectly. It can be helpful to feel the sensations of the body being supported, feeling the weight of the feet on the floor, feeling the weight of your body in your seat. And maybe a kind of yielding to gravity as you allow the shoulders to drop down. Maybe as the shoulders are dropping down, the neck is effortlessly moving upward. Letting the awareness find any areas of the body that are tense or tight, or where there's holding or discomfort. And then the exhale breath, inviting a kind of softening. Each exhale breath can be a softening, settling. And then letting the attention rest on the feeling of the breath moving in and out of the body. And as you receive the sensations of the breathing body, there can be a sense that everything else kind of fades into the background. And then letting the practice be really simple, breathing in, knowing, feeling, sensing the in-breath, breathing out, knowing, sensing, feeling the out-breath. And every time the mind wanders into the pasture of thinking, it's coming right back, letting that thought go, even mid-thought, coming right back to sense of being connected to the breathing body. So many ways to connect with the breath. You might be following a entire cycle of breath, bringing attention to the various parts of the body that the breath moves through. Or you might focus on the belly, expanding and contracting, or maybe focusing on the chest, rising and falling. Or maybe some air at the nose or the upper lip. Maybe even a kind of energetic sense of the whole body breathing, as if every cell in the body were breathing. And just staying connected with the breath in whatever way feels most easeful, most pleasant. Oh, letting go of any agenda, nothing to get or get rid of, no one you have to be. Just this breath. Breathing in, aware of breathing in, breathing out, aware of breathing out. For this second type of mindfulness, more relaxed, it's a sense of mm, relaxing back in some way. And when you notice that the mind has wandered into thinking, you can take a moment to investigate that experience, maybe dropping in a mental label, planning, remembering, daydreaming. Maybe seeing if that thought has some associated energy in the body. Bring your awareness to that energy if it's present. And then coming back to the breath, where breathing in and breathing out. Whenever you notice that the attention has wandered from the breath, establishing mindfulness. Where is the mind now? And eventually returning back to sensitivity to the body, breathing in, breathing out. And then a third mode of practice, letting go of anything that feels like a technique or practice, letting go even of the idea of meditation, and just resting. Awareness notices experience, but we can have a sense of not getting involved in anything. Aware at what's happening internally and externally, but a kind of relaxing back. And then you can let the sound of the bell guide the attention outward. So the teaching, I'll share this with you in case you want to read along. This is the Atta Danda Sutta. This word danda means kind of means stick. It's actually a word that's familiar to me. My parents' language, Punjabi, it's the same word. And I remember being a child and the elders who were upset at us rowdy kids would talk about, they were going to go get a stick. Atadanda is picking up a stick, which the translator has translated as arming oneself. So I'll just read it first. And this is written in verse. So I like this translation because the translator, Andy Alinsky, has kind of kept true to the poetic style of speaking. It might not be as literal a translation as some of the others. Fear is born from arming oneself. Just see how many people fight. I'll tell you about the dreadful fear that caused me to shake all over. Seeing creatures flopping around like fish in water too shallow, so hostile to one another. Seeing this, I became afraid. This world completely lacks essence. It trembles in all directions. I longed to find myself a place unscathed, but I could not see it. Seeing people locked in conflict, I became completely distraught. But then I discerned here a thorn, hard to see, lodged deep in the heart. It is only when pierced by this thorn that one runs in all directions. So if that thorn is taken out, one does not run and settles down. Who here has crossed over desires, the world's bond, so hard to get past? He does not grieve, she does not mourn. His stream is cut, she's all unbound. What went before, let go of that, and what's to come, have none of it. Don't hold on to what's in between, and you'll wander fully at peace. For whom there is no I-making all throughout the body and mind, and who grieves not for what is not, is undefeated in the world. For whom there is no this is mine or anything like that is theirs, not even finding selfness, he does not grieve at I have nothing. The very first line to me is kind of a mic drop moment. Fear is born from arming oneself. Sometimes we might arm ourselves because we feel fear, but what does the act of arming ourselves actually do to that fear? The translators commenting that do we really feel more safe when we lash out at our critics? You know, just see how many people fight. I'll tell you about the dreadful fear that caused me to shake all over. It's very unusual to hear the Buddha talking about himself in the first person in such a kind of like honest, sort of vulnerable way. I find that very inspiring. Seeing creatures flopping around like fish in water too shallow, so hostile to one another, seeing this, I became afraid. This image of fish flopping in water, it feels very apropos for the energy that I'm sensing and sort of like the zeitgeist of this moment. Um, and it doesn't really matter like what side of the political spectrum you're on. There's a lot of flopping about. Uh, the world completely lacks essence. It trembles in all directions. I longed to find myself a place unscathed, but I could not see it. This is sort of the central promise of Buddhist practice, is that in this world rife with conflict, uh, rife with greed, hatred, and delusion, rife with so many difficulties, that we can find a place unscathed. Another way we sometimes talk about this is a place of refuge, a place where we feel safe, where we feel like we can relax, that we can be ourselves, can have a sense of well-being or belonging, whatever it is for our unique set of experiences that would be meaningful to us. And it's not so hard to see. If it were, we wouldn't have these like elaborate teachings and passive practice. Um, Seeing people locked in conflict, I became completely distraught. It's relatable. Uh, but then I discerned here a thorn, hard to see, lodged deep in the heart. Sometimes this is translated as arrow or dart. Um, but the image of a thorn lodged deep in the heart as the kind of source of this fear, this anxiety, this stress. Whether we'd use a Pali word dukkha, it's like I don't have a great translation, but it's the unsatisfactoriness of life, or that life comes with its share of difficulties. Um, Kind of a profound insight to see that the source of all this is a thorn lodged in the heart. It's so easy to blame the world, and that is, my usual tendency. Certainly, it's like, you know, it's a lot of what I call if only thinking. Like, if only those people would not do the things they're doing or do these other things, then I could find my place unscathed. Then I could be at peace. Then I could have a sense of refuge. The Buddha is flipping the script. He's pointing to that our liberation, our freedom, our sense of well-being, our sense of okayness in a world that he described as being on fire 2,600 years ago. Is really the practice of identifying and gently dislodging this thorn. It's only when pierced by this thorn that one runs in all directions. It's running in all directions is another way that the teachings sometimes talk about this wheel of samsara, this like repeating cycle of not being free, of looking in all directions for that place unscathed, but not really finding it. Uh, because we're usually looking for the wrong thing. We're usually looking for the set of external circumstances that will be satisfying. Uh, and it's hard to arrange. You know, with only so many ways you can rearrange the furniture, and then at some point, uh, you realize the futility of trying to get everything perfect. You satisfy a desire, and then another one pops up. Reminds me of the person who is single and longing to be in a relationship, and then they meet the person, and it's like it clicks. It's like soulmates, and they just know that they were lovers in a distant lifetime, and all is well for a time. And then a few weeks go by, and you realize why you haven't kept in touch with them for 2,000 years. Uh, Conditions change, and then our mind also changes. So this sutta can be seen as a kind of representation of the Four Noble Truths. The beginning is talking about fear, anxiety, creatures flopping about. We could say this is suffering. First Noble Truth, the realization that that's a characteristic of the world we live in. And then the realization of the thorn, we could say, is like the second noble truth. Our suffering arises from this thorn lodged deep in the heart. Um, and if we take it out, then we don't suffer anymore. And the second half of the sutta is really pointing to the specifics of how we dislodge the thorn. Who here has crossed over desires, the world's bond, so hard to get past? She's not grieved, she's not mourned. The stream is uncut, she's all unbound. Oh. Like another version of, trying to arrange everything just perfectly. It's kind of a recipe that we're almost given by society, that the way to happiness is like have a bunch of desires, you have a bunch of things on your to-do list, and you just check them off one by one. Uh, and So when they talk about crossing over desires, I take that as don't be fooled into thinking that the satisfaction of these desires will be the answer to all your problems. Um, as far as I know, none of us are mendicants or monastics, so we've chosen to live in this world and be engaged in it and have enjoyment for all the things it has to offer. But we can do that with our eyes wide open. What went before, let go of that. All that's to come, have none of it. Don't hold on to what's in between. So that's interesting because we talk a lot about being in the moment, letting go of the past and the future, but being in this moment. It's where mindfulness collects data. It's where everything's actually unfolding. Um, but here, the Buddha is saying, don't hold on to anything. Basically, just don't hold on to anything. Just let go. Let go of all clinging, past, present, and future, and you'll wander fully at peace. And probably my favorite stanza in this, Andy and I were talking about this before the meeting. For whom there is no I-making all throughout the body, and who grieves not for what is not, is undefeated in the world. And I like, we can use words like not self or non-self, but they feel a little bit esoteric or kind of hard to feel into, like certainly feel like I'm a self and you are all selves, and we have our perspectives and our point of views and our personalities and preferences. But when we talk about I making as an activity of mind, I feel like this is something we can understand. Like a moment of uh, being awestruck by the beauty of something, standing on the summit of a mountain or a sunset or moonrise, where the sense of me is very small and it's like just this connection with something larger, an intimate moment with another being, where the sense of separation dissolves. Um, and there's no I making really happening, and how profound those moments can be, in part because we're not clinging to this sense of identity. I had this experience recently at Spirit Rock where I was giving the Dhamma talk in the evening, and it's about 110 people in the room. So if you're prone to fear of public speaking, it's nerve wracking. For some strange reason, I don't have that fear usually. But as I was walking into the hall, somebody motioned for me they wanted to tell me something, and I bent down and they whispered in my ear, "This better be good." And I thought it was funny. I laughed. I was like, you know, uh, and then the mind just went berserk. Like I just started thinking, well, what if this is not good? Maybe I should spend more time preparing. What if this is terrible? What if this is the worst speech, worst Dhamma talk in the history of Spirit Rock, and I go down as infamous? Like, what if people start leaving the room or booing me? All this just craziness happening. Because I was really creating this sense of self about identity or taking birth and like being a good teacher or being a success, whatever was going on in the mind, was causing a lot of stress. And it's just in this activity of the mind of selfing. And actually, because I've worked on this project of uh, not I making, I was sort of quick to realize what was happening here. I actually said to myself, "There's a lot of selfing going on here," and once we identify that, um, it's actually not that difficult to allow the body to come into a kind of balance. So I noticed a lot of selfing thinking happening here, and then I noticed the butterflies in the stomach, the slightly rapid breathing. It's like associated with nervousness or anxiety. And then I came to where I noticed the jaw was clenched and there was a hollowness in my chest and a coolness in my belly. And maybe a minute, I sort of felt like I was back to my baseline. And um, this is a really nice takeaway. Like sometimes I think we can have a notion that we should just be solid in our equanimity and undisturbed by anything that happens around us. And, maybe that's a nice aspiration to have a kind of unshakable mind. But I think it's almost just as good if we can learn to quickly re-regulate ourselves when we do go out of balance. In a world that feels very challenging, it feels like I can't pick up my phone or go to a news website or even have conversations with some people that don't just lead to outrage. So that like giving ourselves some grace, because the uh, outrage is really connected to love. Well, I wouldn't feel outraged if there wasn't something at stake that we really cared about. For whom there is no this is mine or anything like that is theirs, not even finding selfness, he does not grieve at I have nothing. Very poignant for those of us that are in the LA area. Like, I've never been involved in a natural disaster. I probably know 24 people who lost their homes and are in this place of like, have nothing. And what an aspiration to like not have to grieve it. I have nothing. And also maybe recognition that all the things that we think we have, Jack Kornfield says, you're just borrowing them while you're here on this planet. And once you're gone, you don't get to take them with you. That's like pointing to the futility of materialism. So I'm interested to hear if anyone has any comment, anything that jumps out at you. What's your oh, Lori?
Hi, how are you?
Hey, good. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for speaking with us today. And I've been trying to understand the concept of non-self, and I've found it challenging.
Yeah,
But what I do experience, I think, is what you're talking about, where like I have a lot of physical pain, and the more I focus on my pain, the more I make myself suffer.
yeah,
And when I started to try to become aware of those thoughts more often, I realized how self-involved I am in it and how much I'm ignoring the rest of the world.
yeah, yeah. I mean, our most people's tendency is to be self-referential, and really, it's really powerful to see how that sense of self is so variable. Like if you're really involved in, uh, I just think about like, if somebody says something critical, I can be totally like calm or relaxed or even worse for me, somebody says critical of someone says something critical of someone I care about. And then just like this energy of like defense and fighting, it just like comes out of nowhere. And, we serve ourselves well when we are vigilant to when that's arising and uh, don't fall for it. Like there's no fruit at there's no prize at the end of that fight. Uh, Will,
Good day, all.
um,
Hi, Gullu Singh.
nice to see you.
Yes, it's nice to see you again. We first met at Spirit Rock my first time. I joined you for a 7-day retreat at which I was able to stay for 3. I'm very proud of being able to stay for 3 in an in-person experience. It was some of the self stuff that came up, and there was a lot. I'm able to mark that now from where I was then to where I am today and see so much growth and openness and presence. So there was the body with what do you call it? Oh, I got a Charlie horse the first night because I didn't have my multivitamins and the idea of silent retreat. If anyone's ever been on one, this kind of an odd thing where you're jovial and connected the first night and then you're silent and everybody's in silos. That was jarring to me. And so that was the interpersonal connectedness piece, which being cut off hit me in a different kind of a way than I ever could have imagined, or feeling cut off. And then so that did turn into criticism of a lot of different things, trying to find my safety and find my and it's and it fits that eye making, I think. And so it just lands so differently today, having had that experience, having worked with fear and written, breaking through, getting able to write again in the time since. And so anybody who has plans to go on a retreat or has been on one and not completed it, I'm living proof that whatever the retreat experience is what's meant for the person, because that what would have been 7 days has lasted this entire time and will last the rest of my life of growth.
Mm,
And I want to take this moment to thank you for that,
mm,
because you are appreciated for the very one you are, as I'm accepting myself for the very one I am.
mm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it's really nice for you to say, and it's also really nice to hear that that was so fruitful for you. I was like, it was last summer, so it's like really stayed with you. Yeah.
Fall, yeah.
Fall, yeah, okay. Yeah. Uh, what's the thorn in this uh, teaching?
I have a thorn.
What's it?
Living it is just not easy. It's
Yeah,
painful.
yeah,
It's horrifically painful.
yeah, yeah. That's one version of the thorn. Is just like the unsatisfactoriness of this realm of existence. Hatred. It's one of the classical things. Anybody think of the other two?
Well,
The big three.
if you say hatred, I have to say greed and ignorance.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for. A greed, ignorance, delusion, greed, hatred, delusion. Greed is a weird word. It's a these are Victorian translations we got from uh, British aristocrat. Uh, Desire is maybe sufficient. This sutta mostly talks about desire. Hatred also feels like a strong word, although we do see hatred like kind of in action at this time in our world. Like when I look internally, I don't see a lot of hatred, but I see a lot of agitation, irritation, aversion, anger. And then delusion is, you know, hard to see. So helps when we can have spiritual friends or teachers to point out when we're in sort of the wrong view. Tinker.
Actually, my name is Jennifer, but yeah, okay. Yeah, there's a long story behind the tinker there. In any case, could the thorn also be something like your own personal pain, or is it really like these big three? That's because that wasn't clear for me.
I think in the sutta, because this is designed to be a parallel of the Four Noble Truths, that the thorn is really referring to aversion and desire. But
Mhm.
but also I think the larger teaching, which is that our freedom lies in letting go. It's like really like letting go of whatever's impeding us from being free. So like, and certainly those things have their personal flavor to them, our own
Mhm.
regrets, remorse, grudges, all the things that we kind of carry around that um, don't serve us anymore.
Okay, thanks.
What do you make of this phrase? The world completely lacks essence. It trembles in all directions. I long to find myself a place unscathed, but could not see it. What does it mean, the world completely lacks essence? I find that, slightly puzzling because, like, you know, talking about emptiness, the world lacks essence, seems awareness, world lacks stability. Yeah. That's an interpretation that makes sense. We're just talking about change. Things are always changing.
I'll pop in real quick and just, yeah, contemplating that. It's all sort of like, yeah, a version of the not self experience, not in, the way I see it, it's like permeating beyond just the self and into the world as well.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I mean, there's a lot in this. I've been sort of contemplating this for a few weeks now, and there's so many layers of things. But one big takeaway for me, which I'll offer to you, is just notice this activity of selfing. Just notice from time to time, depending on what you're engaged in, how the sense of self emerges more strongly. And it's not always a bad thing, like um, if I didn't come here with a sense of self, it'd be really boring. But it's like you can notice when the sense of self is in service of connection, and when the sense of self is just causing misery. That's your homework. So I have I have a mailing list. If any of you want to keep tabs of what I'm up to, I will share that link. And uh, customary at the end of these kinds of gatherings to just reflect on the positive karmic impacts of our meditation practice, our Dhamma discussion, and to seed this aspiration that the goodness of this, the positive impacts of this practice will inure not only to our own benefit, but to the benefit of all beings everywhere without exception. May all beings be happy. May all beings be safe. May all beings live with peace and in ease. Andy, I don't know if you have any closing announcements or anything, but
Just thank you very much. Really appreciate you being here. And yeah, check the chat, everyone, for Gulu's information and for a link to our schedule for Lunchtime Mindfulness. Next week, we have Dave Smith. So looking forward to seeing you all then. Thank you. Have a great
thanks
week.
everyone. Be well. Take care. See you next time.
Bye. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you, Guru.